So as mentioned, yes, we're going to be looking at how to execute global and local strategies with the brand behind the brands, Bluebell. So as was mentioned, for the session today, it's myself, Daniel Hagos, Managing Director for Greater China, Southeast Asia at Emarsys. And we have Jacky Leung, the CIO for Bluebell. Thanks for the session today, Jacky. All right, so a quick introduction to Emarsys for those that don't know. We'll do an introduction to Bluebell, and then we'll start the chat between myself and Jacky. So for Emarsys, we're the only omni-channel customer engagement platform built to accelerate business outcomes. The way that we do this is that we have built-in industry-specific analytics and use cases in the platform. The idea with these use cases is that they're channel agnostic, and we aim to have personalization across all of these channels using our fully integrated CDP. For this to work, we use actionable AI, and this really allows us to scale one-to-one personalization and optimize results for our clients. We'll talk about Bluebell as well and about some of the work that we do with them. So Jacky, over to you for Bluebell.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me. So we are Asia-based, omni-brand curator and operator. We were founded in 1954, family-owned and operated corporation. Currently, we operate over 160 brands across 10 markets in Asia with 4,000 staff. Next slide, please. So our operation covers all channels, including bricks and mortar retail, e-commerce, wholesale, travel retail. We're also operating our own multi-brand stores across channels. For example, such as in Japan, we're operating a brand called L'Atelier de Parfum. It's a multi-brand workshop kind of a fragrance shop. And then in Malaysia, we're operating a brand called B Space, something like a activewear, streetwear, multi-brand shop, very, very beautiful and nicely. Next slide, please. So in terms of product categories, we are introducing global luxury and premium brands across Asia, including fashion, accessories, jewelry and watches, eyewear, retail, F&B, fragrance and beauty, tobacco, and spirits. Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, thanks, Jacky. And then just looking at the solution that Bluebell have with Emarsys, it's really designed to look at marketing automation, customer lifecycle marketing, and RFM analysis. So one of the first things we did when we were working with Bluebell was really trying to get an understanding of their customers, customer behavior, and really trying to plan actually what the customer lifecycle would look like. We then ensured that we have product recommendations in place and that we have these across channels as well. So it's been a really interesting project. And I think it will, when we talk later on around some of the work that we're doing with Bluebell, you'll really see that there's a lot of emphasis around, firstly, understanding customers and what customer behavior is like. And then secondly, thinking around how you can optimize and maximize on the relevant channels. And then lastly, this is just a quick overview of what a customer lifecycle could look like. And again, the objective really for us when we're working with marketers like Bluebell Group is to move away from doing just newsletter marketing and really try to understand customer behavior, customer lifecycle, so that if we see, for example, that somebody is lapsing and becoming inactive, we really try to think around how we're engaging with them. What's been really interesting working with Bluebell is that Bluebell have a really strong loyalty program, but also have a lot of emphasis around how customers purchase from individual brands, because obviously that's the area that they focus on. So we've been working really closely with Jacky on trying to understand actually this individual customer lifecycle for each individual brand that we're working on. Okay, all right, so thanks, Jacky, for the intro, and we can jump into the Q&A. So now, one of the things that I love about my job is when we do these types of marketing events, I get to kind of think around different ideas and different discussions that I think would be useful. And Bluebell was one that I was really interested in doing. And the reason for that is, you know, when I first moved to Hong Kong 6 years ago, what I found really interesting was that there were a couple of organizations, mainly Bluebell, who do this type of work, where they work with global brands, and they're responsible for really translating and executing that strategy locally. And it's this really interesting balance. So I guess to start with, Jacky, you know, how do you strike this balance between the fact that you work with really leading global brands, often luxury brands who actually have very strong emphasis on what their strategy is. And then you're responsible for really driving this across Asia. And I say Asia loosely because actually there's so many different markets. Each market behaves in a different way. So yeah, how do you strike this balance?
Well, definitely it's not easy, especially as a brand distributor. I have to say, first of all, we focus on supporting the brand principles, global strategy, and marketing plan in the local market. But instead of just following the brand principles guidelines, often we will suggest appropriate localization for specific campaigns so they will better fit the local market and connect with the local audiences. So to us, adaptation to local culture is very, very important. And this is where our expertise comes in, the knowledge on preferred local solutions and channels with the right content for the end consumer in each market. This is the key part of how we work with our brands.
Okay. And I think it's interesting because, global brands are having to take notice of Asia a lot more than I think they would have had to previously, right? And I think there's the localization that's happening in Asia is a lot stronger than it would have been. And we've seen examples of brands where perhaps they didn't do enough localization into the Asian market and, the messaging wasn't received as well. So yeah, it's really interesting to think around that adjustment. And, you talked about channels, what type of adjustments, have you had to do? Could you give examples of, how you've had to manage different campaigns, manage different strategies depending on the markets that you're working with?
Well, managing more than 160 brands in Asia is really a big challenge for us. And especially with all these different channel selections, different platforms, different apps. So I think, first of all, when we talk about understanding the culture, I would say first, in each individual market or countries, you have to blend in with the local requirement and the local understanding of the cultures. Say, I'll give some examples, such as, say, in Japan, Christmas has never been, actually, Christmas is not really a holiday in Japan, but Christmas Eve is a kind of romantic day. So when we execute campaigns specifically made for Christmas in other regions, then we may have to adjust a little bit for Japan so that it's not treated as a holiday, but as a romantic day. So the images that we're using, the wording that we're using may have to be localized accordingly. Another example, this is also in Japan, say Valentine's Day in February. There's a White Valentine in March 14th in Japan. So back-to-back campaign after traditional Valentine, then come to White Valentine will be very useful. And in fact, this White Valentine is also spreading across different parts in Asia, besides Japan nowadays. So what we do is we focus on suggesting adjustments for specific functions or specific marketing materials or campaigns to better fit with the local festivals, including different types of image selection. We even sometimes change the color tone for specific campaigns so that it will feel local better. And then in terms of the channels, talk about different social media channels, or traditionally we use EDM, and then SMS is coming back. Besides all this Instagram and Facebook, we are actually now more focusing in chat marketing, besides WeChat and WhatsApp, Line and KakaoTalk, etc. Actually, it's quite interesting when we talk about Line and KakaoTalk. Line was originally developed in Korea and Japan together. But then we realized it's actually not really being used in Korea anymore, but KakaoTalk has picked up. But now Line is very, very popular in Taiwan and Thailand, besides Japan. So understanding all of these different platforms, different apps, different channels of communication is very important.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think you touched on two areas which I find really fascinating. I guess the first is around, well, not even, I think that there's a perception with events and also with channels where people try to make it an equivalent of something else. So they tried, and even you've said it actually, you say it's this day is romantic, this day is like a romantic day. And I think there's this translation that happens. But actually, as you said, there's also something which is very unique about a particular event or a particular channel. What I found interesting with channels, let's say, for example, with Line, is that it's the same platform, obviously, but how it's used in Korea and Japan is quite different, right? So actually in Korea, it's seen as being a marketing tool, a marketing channel in a way, but in Japan, it's more for private messaging, it's more for communicating with your friends.
Yes,
so then it's really interesting. So actually, because you would have to sit and think, okay, well, we've got these different channels and we've got these different strategies and we've got all of our different markets and obviously our brands as well. How can we make sure that we deliver the right messaging for the brands that we're working with on the right channel, considering the market and the messaging as well? So it's this really interesting balance to have to make. And in a way, you even mentioned something like SMS, which, SMS was really dying as a channel actually, but now it's starting to become more and more popular, especially for retailers, because it's, the read rates are really high. It's really easy to kind of come back and find like a voucher code or things like that. So it is really interesting when you think about omni-channel, because it's very much understanding the market and also very much understanding the channel and how it's perceived in that market.
For us, what we realize is it's very, very important to understand or to listen to your customer and then make adjustment. So say the official line accounts that we operate in Taiwan, instead of keep pushing messages in a pattern or in a specific schedule, so we are now customizing the messages being pushed based on customers' feedback, and this will ensure the messages are being really pushed to the customers, or they will receive the right information at the right time.
Okay, interesting. And so if we move on and we think around channels from a customer's perspective, not necessarily social media channels, but where they're engaging with you. So we've always been speaking about e-commerce and retail, and we've always been thinking around, because I know Bluebell, naturally, you manage e-commerce, you manage retail as well, and you've in some markets been launching e-commerce quite quickly. So how has your focus changed? There's obviously pre-COVID and the strategies that you had there. During COVID, we can talk about the future slightly later on, but how have your focus changed between these two channels?
If we are putting in COVID, then I really have to say COVID did help us to accelerate digital transformation, especially last year. Indeed, we started the journey of digital transformation a few years ago, but we realized the consumer adaptation of buying luxury or even premium products online was relatively low in Asia. But since the COVID outbreak last year and the lockdowns, some of our brands and operation has actually doubled the growth in e-commerce. Say we have a tea brand that we operate in Japan, there's a 300% growth. An accessory brand in Taiwan, we benefited at 200% growth in e-commerce. Even fragrance in Japan, our e-commerce growth, and another lifestyle brand that we operate across entire Asia also benefited 100% growth last year. So e-commerce growth during COVID definitely ignite a lot of ideas and help us to kickstart a few more digital projects across the region. But we don't see it just e-commerce. We are still thinking about omnichannel as a total solution to our consumer market.
Yeah, it's interesting the quotes, the parts that you mentioned, because there was a famous quote I read, and I'm paraphrasing because it was a long time ago. I think it might have even been like at university, which said, that nobody would buy shoes online. And the reason people wouldn't buy shoes online is because, you need to go and try them on. So, in the early days of e-commerce, people thought you'd only buy like electronics, buy things that are not as tangible as things like shoes. And the two industries you mentioned fragrances and tea, which it's taste and smells. It's such things that you need to probably interact with in real life. So it's interesting you gave those examples as ones that have had really, really strong growth. How do you sell tea online? How do you sell fragrances online? How do you drive customers to be doing that and to engage with purchasing products that usually they would want to? You go to a tea shop, you would usually try a sample of it. So how do you change that experience or expectation?
Let me use the fragrance as an example, because originally we never thought it would be so successful, honestly. First of all, it is very helpful with all the loyal customers. And then when we are bringing it into the new customer spectrum of online selling perfume and fragrances, one of the challenge that we face is, as you said, how do you tell the customer what kind of smell it is? So what we're trying to do is, lately we are running some live streaming shows in Instagram, where we are creating a very elegant way to promote, say, the new spring collection of fragrance products in Japan, where our staff, they are actually the hosts in this Instagram live streaming. They're telling the customers, okay, for specific atmosphere or for specific moods, these are the fragrance that you may want to wear, and it includes different types of fragrance smells and scents that will be suitable for specific atmosphere. And then followed up by different Q&A, live Q&As. Customer may actually feel how they will interact with their plans. So there you go.
So actually, you, in a way, you create an environment, or at least you create the situation in which customers can recreate those smells or senses or tastes. So yes. It might be, and also it might be something that you link to seasons. So, if something feels Christmassy or it smells like autumny, or, someone can smell something mentally when they're seeing those images because they know what they feel like. So you can recreate it through imagery. Yeah, it's nice. Okay. And you mentioned as well around new technologies for in-store staff. So one of the, with this whole omni-channel conversation, there's often, I think, been this slight disconnect between online and offline, and offline or in-store staff perhaps being not necessarily resentful of online, but having a concern that online could take over everything. But it feels like with what's happened with COVID, there's been this true connection between the two. And actually, as you said, the in-store staff have actually helped to drive online transactions, and the two are truly working hand in hand, right?
Yes, indeed. Our offline staff, well, honestly, during the lockdown, most of them cannot report to duty and they are staying at home. But what they do is they're contacting the VIP customers through chatting apps, say WeChat or WhatsApp, or in Japan, Line or wherever, the other chatting apps that where is common in the local markets, so that they will continuously to discuss or to showcase the new products to our customers, and to offer free shipping, for example, so that there is still transaction going on. Right after the lockdowns in some areas, we will arrange private in-store sessions for the VIPs. So they will close the entire shop with just, let's say for the hour or for the 2 hours time frame, it would be just for these two specific customers that will come in. So from the customer point of view, they will feel very, very safe. But we have to prearrange all of this with different online marketing tools. Another example in Malaysia is quite interesting. With the interstate lockdown in Malaysia, say people in KLCC, Kuala Lumpur City Center, they cannot travel to Genting Highland. But where Genting Highland, we have the outlets, right? So what we did in the live shows is, instead of the traditional sales-driven live shows, we are trying to create an environment that we're bringing the shopping experience from the outlet to the consumers. So all of these are being offline and online interacting to on top of each other.
Okay, interesting. So hopefully next time there's a VIP event, I might get an invite. I'm not sure if I'm a high spender enough, but let's see. But okay, so I had a few more questions, and I've seen there's actually some questions in the Q&A as well. So I think we can come to those later. But just one, because we started to touch on it. So predictions for the future of retail. So yeah, what do you think? We've started to touch on it by talking around omni-channel, or you've talked around digital transformation, kind of speeding and COVID speeding up that process. What do you see as being the future of retail?
Omni-channel is a must. Marketing message must be consistent across all channels and customer touchpoints. This is what we will foresee in the years to come. Having proper dashboard and marketing automation tools is actually essential. You cannot live without this anymore. But fine-tuning the touch points during different customer life cycle to us is the key. Of course, having a good marketing automation platform such as Emarsys will definitely help our marketing team to run their day-to-day campaigns. But we are still looking for new trends, new tools globally or locally for new ideas. We did a field study in different regions in Asia that it is very apparent that customers would still love to visit our physical stores. And it has become a shopping experience instead of just going out for shopping. So to us, collecting all of this offline data is also very important for our continuous success. We're looking into adding new sensors with built-in AI and machine learning capabilities so that we can collect more data on offline world and then combine all of this to all the online data that we collect previously. Then we have a true 360 view of our customers. So with all of this data analytics in place, we will be able to understand our customer better and serve them better.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's very interesting because a lot of it, although data collection sometimes isn't seen as being positive, or people have concerns about privacy, but actually if it's done in the right way, it's essential for marketing and also help to improve marketing experience for customers. So, I think for Bluebell, you have a really strong loyalty program, right? So that helps you to capture transactional data, but then you also want to capture other sources of data that you can use to see people's interests. You can see what they're perhaps looking for, and then it can actually really change how you do merchandising, which products you position to customers, and actually it means that customers can overall be happy. So I think collecting data offline is always a challenge, because you also don't want customers to feel forced to have to complete a survey or something like this, which can be not the nicest way to interact. But I agree with you. Yeah, I think the data collection part's essential, and I think omnichannel is a must, and I think customers are starting to really demand this. And I think this sometimes there's rumors or wisps in the wind, that retail is dying, and I don't think it is, but I think it's we've seen globally businesses have been impacted are the ones that haven't really achieved strong omnichannel. If they're very focused or just focused on retail, then unfortunately, even pre-COVID, they were the ones that actually were most badly hit, I would say.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. And then just one last question from me, and then I think we can go to the Q&A. So how do you advise brands to come into Asia market? How do you, when you speak to businesses that say they want to come into Asia, and everybody's very excited about Asia, and a lot of people, in the US or in Europe, don't really understand the market. They just see lots of dollar signs. So when you speak to brands, what is it you say to them about coming into the market?
Honestly, that's quite easy for us. Indeed, we have been using a hashtag in all our social media accounts. Think Asia, think Bluebell.
Okay, so work with Bluebell. Work with you guys. You're the best. You've got 60 plus years experience. You know the market best, I think, right?
Yes, exactly. We have the expertise to assist the brands, as we are the brand behind the brands.
Okay, perfect. All right, look, Jacky, thank you so much for your time. I think we've got a few minutes for questions, so let me just check the ones that we've got here. So the first one, which came through, I think first earlier on in the session, how do you gauge customer sentiment towards each of your brands? What metrics do you use?
Oh, this will actually is a very long list, but the basic three are the recency, monetary, and the RFM metrics, basically. So this is what we're looking in initially, and then we will look. Of course, we're looking to segmentizing our customers so that we will have a better campaign for each particular customer segment.
Okay, cool. And one more, it's a long one. Jacky, do you see a convergence in roles for marketers, comms, and IT? as CIO, do you oversee much more functions than just tech at Bluebell? Can you share the structure and how it's worked for your organization? So I think this is, yeah, organizational structure. How do you see roles combining and not having this kind of siloed approach? I mean, I think we even started to talk about online and offline, but I think it's more, in-house in a way, behind scenes.
This is a very, very interesting and indeed very good question. For us, we have been also changing a lot of perspective and also our roles in the company. Previously, I was only in charge in IT, but since 2-3 years ago, I started to also take care of digital, and then lately, I'm working very, very closely with the marketing teams in each of the regions. We don't really have the role of a CMO, and I'm not acting as a CMO as well, but I'm working very closely with the team because digital tech marketing to us is all in
it's connected, yeah.
Ecosystem. You cannot live without the other. You cannot understand without the other. You have to work very closely with each other.
I think it's so important. And, when we've had most success with businesses is when everybody's thinking around the customer. It's not IT in one room, marketing in another room, comms in another room, merchandising, it's all connected. And actually the last question we have is really linked to this. And I can share my opinions first, actually, if it's okay, but someone's asked, may I ask how mapping out customer life cycles help your business, and how do you get in buy-in from management to conduct such exercises? Now, from our experience, one of the first projects that we do with our clients is to look at ERFM analysis. So we look at engagement, recency, frequency, and monetary values. So we start by looking at the data, and from the data, we can say, well, what does this data tell us about your business? So do you have customers that buy once but don't buy again? Do you have a lot of inactive customers? We try to actually understand, firstly, based on your data, what does it tell us about your organization? And then we map out the customer life cycles. But in terms of getting buy-in from management, my way of doing it is to talk about the data. And we've had some instances. I remember once we worked with a cosmetics business, and that company wanted to focus on their high spending customers. They said, let's focus on our VIPs, make sure they're happy. When we analyzed their data, we saw that 50% of their customers buy once and 50% buy more than once, could be up to 6 times per year. So we said, well, actually, don't worry about your VIP customers. They just keep spending money. They love your brand. It's not a problem. So actually, by looking at your data, the gap to focus on is first time to repeat. If you can improve that gap, this is how much more money you make. So I think that the whole flow it's all connected, starting by data, analyzing the data, looking at customer life cycles. And if the data proves the use case, then management hopefully should just say, okay, great, let's do it. But what do you think, Jacky? How have you conducted similar things?
Honestly, this is exactly the case that happened with us.
I speak from experience, yeah.
Yeah. But I have to also add on for the VIPs, instead of don't worry about them because they will come back. We do handle our VIPs, but in a way that is treated a little bit differently because we will target different campaigns for them. But for the first-time buyer or the second-time buyers, we will have a different campaign. So we are making use of all the data that we collect, and then through different segmentations to offer different campaigns or product offerings or whatever the marketing team can come up with.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, look, Jacky, thank you so much for your time. I think we're out of time for today. It was a fantastic session. Thanks for your sharing. Thanks everybody for their questions. If you want to contact myself, Jacky, over LinkedIn, please feel free to.